What's going on, guys? Vernon here. Today we're getting into part 3 of our bike refresh series. Today we're going to get into replacing pegs and hand grips. And as always, I'll put a link down in the description below for all the parts that I use, as well as the Moto Academy. And to learn more about the Moto Academy, wait to the end of the video and I'll describe what an awesome experience it really is. Let's get to work. Alright guys, so here's what we're putting on the bike today. We got a set of ODI Lock-On Grips in white. We're going to see how well these stay this clean. Hopefully they don't fall and make them muddy the first ride. We'll see this coming Thursday. And we also have a set of Tusk Billet pegs with the steel inserts for grip. And also have a replaceable set of those in my toolbox just in case I either break one of these or they get worn out. So for these two jobs here, these are the tools we're going to need. For the grips, we're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, preferably a number 1 or number 2 will work. Allen wrench for the size here. I'm not really quite sure on the size of this, but if you have an Allen wrench set, you can find your right size. We'll also need a 8mm T-handle for the grips just to get our throttle cable housing loose. And then for the pegs, all we're going to need is some needle-nose pliers, or you can use side cutters. Let's get to it. Alright guys, first things first, let's take care of the grips because they're a little bit easier to take care of than the pegs. There's a little bit more in depth for those. So on the Honda here, for the throttle side, you're actually going to replace the entire grip. It has a little tube inside it. But we're going to take off the start switch. Got a little screw right here for that. Then we're going to take off this housing. So for the housing, you need to move this boot back far enough that you can get access where it can actually split right here. You got 2 cables coming in. And then we're going to take our screwdriver, grab it here, and we're going to get this little screw. I know you can't really see it too well. There's a Phillips head screw right here. We're going to loosen it up, and you can take it and slide it in. And what that does, it gets it clear of this little straight piece right here that's on the housing. So it just kind of guides over this. We're going to leave that start switch there for now. Then next up, we're going to get our T-handle, which I use a set of Tusk T-handles, really affordable. I'll put a link down in the description for these. And we're just going to take these 2 bolts loose right here. Look at this with one hand. We'll see how this goes. And you can see already the throttle housing starting to twist on me. So you want to get these bolts all the way out so your throttle housing comes off. As you can see, the housing split into 2 pieces. You want to pull each piece off and hang on to it. And just slide it off your cable assemblies. We'll put those to the side here. And then you can see here, this is the throttle tube assembly as it comes from ODI. So you have these cables coming in from your throttle. You want to move the cable down the slot, and then it has a little bullet that comes out with it. Remove that, and the other side is just the same, just a little bit longer. Well, the light's not that great for you guys. So move it down, slide it out, and you can slide your throttle tube right off. And what we're going to do with this, I can use this throttle tube, see it says Cam B on there. Cam B is what is necessary for this bike. The ODI grips come with, I want to say it's 6 different cams, and you have to pick the right cam for your bike. They have cams for both 4-stroke and 2-stroke bikes, and this is your whole throttle tube assembly basically. There is no more throttle tube with the ODI grip. This is your tube with the grip already glued onto it, and it just slides on like so. Now let's open the new ones and we'll get the throttle side installed. Okay, so these are all the cams that come included. You also have another 4-stroke cam here. If you notice, all the 4-stroke cams have 2 cables set up. And of course, 2 strokes, they just have the single cable that has the slider in the carb. So you have your single cable set up here for the 2 strokes. There's just 2 different cams for that. Now to change the cam, you just pop that black piece off here. Luckily for me, the Cam B is for my bike. And another thing to note here too, for the proper lineup on your bike, you have this ODI symbol here and also an arrow on the grip itself. You line those 2 up and it's going to get your waffle or whatever, depends on what grip you have. If you have like the half waffle, this is more of a quarter waffle that I have here. It'll line that up in the proper spot so you have good grip on your fingers when you're gripping the throttle. So what we're going to do is come over here to the handlebars, slide the new tube on. Now one thing I've noticed with these clamp-on grips from ODI, to make sure you don't have any binding on your throttle, when you tighten up your clamps here or your casing, you want to make sure your throttle tube is off of the handlebar end just a little bit, because if you put it all the way in and tighten it down, you'll have binding on the end of the handlebars here. So what we're going to do is hook these cables back up and ensure that we have it in the proper position for this cable setup. Well, just like we did in reverse, we're going to slide the little bullet into its slot with the cable lined up and then push it up. You can bring that down. We'll come to the front side. We're going to take the bullet, make sure it's sitting in there right, so you have the bullets kind of twisted a little bit. So I'm going to line it up with the hole in the cable slot, get it in there, you'll see the bullet pop through, and then slide your cable up the cam. Okay, we got our cables hooked up. Here's our housing. It's got a little slot right here in the plastic, goes in a slot on here. You make sure you have your housings right. It will not fit the other way around, and it's going to go over, so I can get it to focus here, over the cam, and you'll have to play with it a little bit. I might have to pull this off camera and do this a little bit better with two hands. Let's do that. Alright, now I got you guys set up. I'm going to show you how to do this two hands, a bit easier. So I always like to get the cable kind of started here first, and you get the cable inside the slot. You just pull the camera around to it. Take your back half, get the same orientation. Get the cable guide with the plastic little grips on it, or the little raised areas, and slide it into the slot on the cable housing. And put it down into one piece. Bring your throttle cable in and then back about 1 millimeter. You don't need much. You want to make sure you have good, smooth throttle motion here. Now, while you hold that in, grab your bolts and get them started. And again, this housing clamps to your handlebars. So what you want to do is, once you get this in, don't tighten it up just yet. You want to get your cable set up just right to where the throttle feels where it needs to be, especially with the grips. So you can adjust it by rotating it on the handlebars. And you also want to make sure you still have that gap on the end. Right now I think I got it a little bit, yeah. Back it off. I got that hand tight. So it has enough friction where I can move it. So I'm going to slide it all the way in. Get in there, have a little bit of free play. I want to back it up just a little bit more. And all you should feel is the spring tension on the throttle body or carburetor, depending on what you're running. So I want to put my hand on the handlebar like I'm going to use it, and go about full throttle and half throttle, just to kind of feel out where that's going to be and where the grips are going to be on the handlebars. So I might move them back just a hair, so I know where the grip is. And again, if you don't want to move if you run out of room here on where your cables are set up for your throttle, you can pull it back apart and rotate that cam. It's got I think it's a hexagon shape to the end of it, and you can rotate that cam left to right however you want it, or however your bike is set up, in order to get the right feel for the waffle on your grip. So I'm going to check my gap one more time. I'm going to slide it all the way in and back out just a little bit. Make sure I still got free motion there. I like where it's at. I'm going to go ahead and clamp down my bolts. Now if those are tight, just have to slide the boot over. And make sure you get the boot all the way over where it's sitting, where it needs to be, nice and flush on the back side here. That keeps all your dirt and debris out of the cable assembly. You don't want any dirt and debris inside there because it'll bind up the throttle. Nice smooth throttle feel there, and also the grip is where I want it. So about half throttle is where I'm kind of cruising on the track. I'm going to be able to get a good feel for it. So it's all about preference where you want those waffles. And again, you have play on the cam and also have play by moving your throttle housing. Then we're going to slide our start switch back up, which it has play on it, so you have it in the right position as well. We'll slide it back up as far as we can. That's just the way I could run it. And then tighten its mounting screw as well. It's more of a clamping screw, but you tighten it up, it's got a lock washer on it, so you don't have to worry about getting too tight. Make sure it doesn't move, and make sure your throttle housing does not move either. So I'm going to reposition you guys, and we're going to swap over to the other side, which is even easier. It's super simple to change the left grip. Alright guys, so on this left hand side, all you need is your Allen wrench. There's a grub screw or a clamp screw on the bottom of this collar right here. We're going to loosen that up. It might take a little bit just the way that clamp works. It clamps on tight, so you have no worry about having these grips move on you when you're riding. And pull the old one off and get the new one on. It's just that simple. And they send these from the factory apparently still a little snug to retain the screw inside this clamp. And again on this side, you can actually push this side all the way in because it does not rotate. Go till you feel it hit the end plate, which the end plates on these ODIs are actually made of metal. And then put your hand on it where you normally have it riding and figure out where you want your waffle to sit. Once you get your waffle or your grip, depending on which grips you get, if you get it where you want it, go ahead and tighten down the screw. And you want to get it pretty snug because remember, this is the grip that you're hanging on to when you're riding. You shouldn't be gripping all your strength into this. Of course, that's how you get arm pump, is death gripping your handlebars. Well, you also don't want your handlebar grip to slide off your bar while you're trying to ride or do a sick whip or something in front of your friends. Then you look like a fool if you fall down. All right, let's move on to the pegs. All right, guys, I have y'all looking up at the bottom of the peg here. So these pegs, of course, they have a spring on them. That's so if you hit something or drag this in the dirt, it's going to spring up and not break off. So the only thing that holds these pegs on really is a cotter pin right here. And you got a washer and a pin that goes through all the way. And you may or may not, depending on your model bike, have a spacer in the center or a little bushing to hang on to the, or to retain the spring and keep it from rubbing on the pin itself. So what we're going to do is take our cotter pin here. We're going to try to bend it straight on both tabs. You want to get it straight enough as you can so you can grab a hold of the end of it, the eye. Get a little force here. And it comes right out. And of course, when you pull the cotter pin, you're going to lose a washer. The washer sits on the bottom of the pin. Hopefully this lighting is good for you guys. So, you got your cotter pin and the pin is left in here. What I'm going to do is push this pin out. If you need to, you can use a hammer and a punch. And you can always see the peg's already loose. And if you just wiggle the peg a little bit, the pin will come right out. And there goes the spring. Make sure you catch that spring, because those springs will go flying and you may never find them. So, that's the old peg. It's got no washer. The pin has no bushing. It's actually a step pin. So, it actually has a flat edge to it. The flat edge is more so you can hang on to it if you need to. There's nothing here that's going to keep it from rotating. So here's our new peg. You can test fit it, make sure it's nice and snug. We know it's going to look good there. And of course, it's going to have motion up and down here. It also has stops built into it. So, what you want to do with this is going to be a little tricky. This spring, see if I can show it on this old one here. The spring sits in like this, where it hooks into the forward side of the peg itself. It's got a little recess here just below the pin, or to the left of where the pin goes. And this other end of the spring is going to sit right here on your peg mount. For the new pegs, they're built for each bike, so make sure when you order your pegs, you get one specific to your bike. Now the link I have in the description is going to have this exact set of pegs for my bike. So when you go to order, make sure that you grab the set of pegs and put your bike into the bike identifier to make sure you have the right peg for your bike. So we're just going to line it up, get your pin started, and then you need to set your spring in so the pin will capture the spring. You may have to push on it just a little bit to get the pin to line up with the spring. What I'm going to do actually is probably go get a hammer, or a mallet I should say, to tap in the pin. So yeah, if you don't have a rubber mallet, you need to use a brass or a bronze mallet. This is a steel pin. Now you don't want to hit your peg or the bracket. Both these pieces here are aluminum. So you can damage the aluminum, but you can't damage the pin since it's a steel pin. And you're going to have both this end of the spring and the other end of the spring in their position ready to go in whenever you start with your pin. And you're going to have to take your finger on the back side of the spring. It's a little tough because you're fighting the spring pressure, and push it to the center of the hole so the pin can go all the way through the spring. And see, like that, and you have to use the hammer on that one. And before you put your washer and cotter pin in, check your movement on your peg. Make sure it's nice and smooth, there's no binding. And right now this is feeling really good, so I'm liking the way this is feeling. And the peg looks really nice on there actually. And if you look closely, it is a little bit bigger of a peg. And it's got more meat to it. Looks a little bit stronger, honestly. I believe the stock pegs are actually steel. So you lose a little weight, which is always a good thing. The lighter the bike, the more fun it is. And then the billet is actually thicker than the steel, so you don't really lose your strength that you had before. And you just tap your cotter pin in. Now these cotter pins, you want to use a new pin every time, because when you bend a cotter pin, it work hardens the metal. Right now I have my old pin in. I'm just going to bend it together for now, and I know to come back with a new pin. I got my cotter pins actually at the airport in my other toolbox. So I'm putting this on here temporarily. I'm going to come back and put a new cotter pin in, just because, like I said, every time you bend a cotter pin, it actually work hardens the metal, and it's more likely to break off or you to hit something with it. But I'll show you how to bend them. So we got the cotter pin on there with a new peg, and if you look closely, so you see the cotter pin, how it's bent kind of like an anchor. So you got one side, they both come out the center of the pin, and the cotter pin wraps around one side on this side, and then this side on this side. It also keeps your washer in there, and that washer is more to keep this big pin, your hinge pin here, from walking out of the mount. So that's how you install a dirt bike peg. What I'm going to do is do the same thing on the other side, and I'll see you guys in the outro. Alright guys, one note for this brake side. So when I try to pull the pin out, it hits the brake lever. So the best way to go about this, honestly, is to find yourself a Allen driver. This is going to be it says an H8, so it's probably 8mm Allen driver, and that's just for the Honda. It's probably going to be different on your bike if you're not riding the Honda, of course. Just get your ratchet, break this bolt loose right here, and of course follow your manufacturer's instructions on how to remove this brake lever and pull this big hinge bolt out. And this is just to get the brake lever out of the way. And the spring at the bottom will probably pull the lever up a little bit. Yeah, see how it does that? Of course, you have a washer in there behind the brake. There's also a bearing inside this one. So I got that out now. Now that that's out of the way, I can work my pin the rest of the way out. Nice and easy. There's a spring, the pin, and an old peg. And that's how you have to do it on the brake side on some manufacturers. Now, it may not be the case for your bike, so it's worth a shot before you start pulling your brake lever off. But if you feel like you need the more clearance, go ahead and pull that brake lever off. Alright guys, one last thing. This is something that we use in aviation. It's called corrosion block. There's also, the same company makes this stuff called ACF 50. It is a corrosion prohibitive chemical. This corrosion block is good for bearings, and I actually use this on a lot of parts on the bike, especially the Pro Links. I'll put a little drop here and there, and it works its way into the bearing and along the seal, and it kind of keeps the bearing nice and lubed and keeps any rust or corrosion out of there. So what I like to do, especially when I put new pegs on, or just before each ride, honestly, I'll take the corrosion block and put a little drop at the top of the pin on the spring itself, because it gets into the pin, and also at the bottom of the pin. And we're going to do that on both sides, of course. And that just helps to keep the corrosion and the moisture out of those areas that you do not want to break off. Because you start getting rust on those pins, they could crack and break off, and then you lose a peg while you're going over a jump. That's a bad day at the track. Also, when you put this brake lever back on, that bearing that's inside here that goes around this bolt, there's a rubber seal, it's like a dust seal that goes underneath the head of the bolt. There's also that washer on the back with a seal there. You want to make sure those two areas are nice and clean. And when you put it back together, you can use corrosion block or whatever lube that you use. Assembly lube is really great for this job. So whatever you want to put on there that's good to keep corrosion out and also keep everything nice and lubricated, that's a big deal in these bikes. That's what makes these bikes last forever, is keeping everything lubed very well. Just a little pro tip for you, especially if you want to use some stuff like this. This is aviation grade stuff. Corrosion block and ACF 50 you can get from any aviation supply store. I'll put a link in the description below. Alright guys, the bike refresh is officially complete for now. Of course, there's always room for improvement. But of course, beginning of this, we started with an all red bike. We went to the Polysport gray graphics. Of course, we also got the Team Moto Academy bike graphics kit. It looks really good. I like the gray on with the red red graphics. We also got the Guts Racing seat up there, and then we have the ODI white soft clamp-on grips, and then the Tusk Racing Billet pegs. It all looks really nice. About 2 days from now, me and my buddy are going to go ride Swampland MX in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. It's a really fun track, and we'll get some video while we're there. I'll probably shoot a couple motos with you guys, and you can check out the track. Don't be impressed by my riding. You will not be impressed by my riding, I will say that. But we're going to try to clear some jumps I haven't cleared yet. We're going to work on some of that stuff, but just to look at this bike, I'm really pleased with it. I do need to do a little bit more work on the seat, I believe. You see a little wrinkle right there in the center. But other than that, it's on there nice and tight. It's good enough for Thursday night. I'm really pleased with the bike. It just looks really nice. These pegs, actually, they are pretty sizable. They're really beefy too. I put my foot up there and I still have the peg sticking out. I always like to run my feet really tight to the frame. So you can see right here how far out the pegs stick. They're a little bit longer than stock. And of course the white grips, they just look nice, especially with the Moto Academy white Phoenix handlebar bar pad right there. But yeah, so this is just the start of a really good YouTube channel, hopefully. Hope you guys enjoy my content. Let me know down in the comments. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one.